In this video I'm going to show you some techniques I used to make this building, and I've showed some of these techniques before in a previous video about another Gothic building. This one's definitely more complicated, or at least there's more detail on this building. Lots of small little ornaments and stuff, but basically mostly the same techniques. But one that I'd like to repeat is this one, to make these kinds of ornaments where there's like a circular pattern, which is really common on these types of Gothic buildings. And for that I did this. I brought in a circle and just brought it up here so I could see what I was doing. And then we go R, X, and then type in 90 so that it's rotated like this. I mean, it depends on like which way your building's rotated, but for me that's, when I rotate it like that, it's facing the building like this. And then you can zoom in if you have a numpad and press the period key. For me it's a comma, but then you zoom in on the selected object, which is really useful. But anyway, then I would do something like this, go into edit mode, and here's vertex select mode, and then you can like delete some of these vertices and then select everything and just pull that up a little bit. Then you can press Shift S and then cursor to selected. And then we add an empty, whichever one. I usually go for sphere or whatever, but it doesn't matter. And then we need to check the scale here on this circle is 1, and same for the empty. Then go to the circle, add an array modifier like that, and then uncheck relative offset and check object offset. And then with this eyedropper tool, select the empty. And now if you spin that, nothing happens actually, that's weird. You need to go to the circle and apply the rotation as well. And now it should work. The angle of the empty will depend on how large the count is. So for 4 of these accounts, or like 4 of these segments, you need 90 degrees. But for whatever count you have, let's say you have 8, then you just go to the empty, and here you type in 360 divided by the count, which 8, and then it looks like that. And then to edit this, you go into the circle, edit mode, and you can bring this up again and do something like that. Now you have a flower. But then you can do this, so like select everything, press E, and then bring that up, maybe scale it up a little bit as well. And then just make it so that it like makes sense here, it doesn't intersect too much. Another thing you can do is like delete half of this and then add a mirror modifier, but put that above the array modifier here. And then you can just edit one side and like, I don't know, give it some spikes or something. That's what I did a lot for this. And you can go even further and like apply this, or right click and convert to mesh. You don't have to do that. Or maybe you have to, I don't know. But then you go into edit mode, and now everything here is like, you can't edit one part here and it'll affect all the others because we've applied the modifier. We can do this. You go into edit mode, select everything and bring that up. And if we set this empty back to 0 for the rotation, and then we add another modifier, another array modifier, set that to object offset and choose the empty, then you can do this again, but just with this more advanced geometry. And yeah, that's just a fun way to get a lot of this detail. And for this I used a lot of references, and here you have them. It's very similar to this one. I looked at this one a lot, but also this one. And always a good idea to have that. If you run out of ideas and just don't know what to do, you can just look at something like this and be like, oh, okay, so that's how it looks. And I found these on Pinterest and ArtStation, I'm pretty sure. You can just Google it as well. Another technique I mentioned in a previous video is the custom bevel shape. So you Control B to bevel something, and then with this menu, it might be hidden like this, but then you just press this and then click custom. And you have some presets here. I really like cornice molding. And if you increase the segments, that's going to show up. Now, one thing to watch out with this is if you have a bevel modifier, which is always a good idea. Add that bevel modifier and then shade smooth. And then here under shading, you can click harden normals. Sometimes with this bevel modifier, if you make it too, if there's too many segments, it might kind of ruin the bevel sometimes. So now when this geometry is very small, that makes the bevel smaller as well, or like it can't handle that basically. But yeah, you can see now that there's basically no bevel. But if I remove that, you know, you can clearly see the bevel. So that's just something to watch out if you have a bevel modifier, which is, like I said, it's a good idea to have that. Just makes it more realistic and natural. The technique I used to make this type of arch the correct way, because I used to make it like this. I had like a plane, brought it in like this, RX90, or actually like that, and then you just bring it up, give it some segments, and then select the top edge and activate proportional editing up here, and then just bring that to the side a little bit with probably another curve here, maybe sharp, yeah, something like that's what I did. And then I like added a mirror modifier to this, something like that, but that's apparently not correct according to somebody, because it's supposed to be made up of you know, a line and then a circle segment. So what I do now is bring in a plane again, then rotate it 90 degrees like that, delete these two, and then in edit mode I add a circle. Let's actually bring the cursor over here. Yeah, add a circle, rotate it 90 degrees, and then bring it up here, make it a bit bigger, and then try to line it up with this line here. So, you know, this vertex, which is right in the middle, should just line up right at the end of this straight line here. And we actually need to join these, so press the circle and then the line and press Ctrl J, so not they're the same object. So if we delete these vertices and then just add a mirror modifier, we can delete these as well, actually just these two. They can double press G and just adjust that so it's right in the middle here. Yeah, convert to mesh, and then in edit mode we're gonna press, yeah, select these two top ones and merge at center. And then we can copy this as an object and then just make it bigger, which this is kind of not the way to do it. You can just kind of eyeball it so that the gap here is equal throughout, which it kind of isn't. I guess the actual correct method would be to just bring in a circle with a larger radius and stuff, but that's not what I did for this one. So I just kind of, yeah, I eyeball it and just make something like this, you know. And then you can join these. And then you can just fill in these faces like that. And now you have an arch, basically. There we go. Now for something like this, where there's like a lot of copies of things, it's really important to use linked copies, at least for someone like me with a pretty bad PC. So like this thing is copied a lot of times, but if you use Alt plus D when you copy something, that's a linked copy, so it uses the same information for these two. Now if I go into edit mode with this one and I change something, you can see it's going to change all of these other ones because they're the same geometry, and that just saves on memory and makes the scene run smoother. If all of these copies were unique objects, I don't think my PC can handle this. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And also use, you know, array modifiers, because that's kind of the same thing. And it's really good as well because, for example, these, if I had just used copies instead of this, I couldn't change, like they would all have the same UV texture or the UV unwrapping. And when you have an array modifier, you can offset the texture. So I'll just show how that looks. If you go into, I think, yeah, this array modifier, and you go to UVs and use this offset here, it will give slightly different coordinates to the texture for each element. So that's really good to have. And in a place like this where you have, you know, separate objects, but they are offset with array modifiers, the exact same distance, or, you know, same way, you could join them and then use an array modifier on them. But if you don't want to do that, you can do this. So I think the trick with this is you have to have the same modifier and it has to have the same name. So for this one, it's array.001. And then if you want to change the count, you can hold Alt and then, decrease the count, and it will affect all these selected objects. And this is something Blender Guru showed in one of his reels on Instagram, I think I saw it. But yeah, that's really handy if you need to do something like that. But like I said, keep in mind they have to have the same name and maybe even the same order here. I don't know, but I think it's mainly the name, and hold Alt when you make changes. You can also change, the distance here. If you hold Alt, they will all be affected in the same way. And yeah, same goes for any modifier really, like a bevel modifier, a mirror modifier. So yeah, really useful. Let's talk about the materials a bit. And I have two different shaders, but they're basically the same. But on this one, I have two things going on, or I guess, a few things. So you can see there's like a stone texture here, but it has like a lot of grunge, and it has like extra grunge on top and on the edges. So let's try to make something similar from scratch. I'm just gonna bring in a cube, give that a new shader, and I have this base texture from Polyhaven, I'm pretty sure, Stone Wall 2. And you can see it's not the same color, but I just used a hue saturation value node for that, just made it a bit brighter. That's pretty much it, I think. Yeah, something like that. Now for the edge grunge, like the dirt on the sides or the edges, which you can kind of see is going on here. Like a lot of these sharp objects have dirt on them, which is what I wanted to kind of recreate. So you just bring in an ambient occlusion node, and I usually set the samples to 5, otherwise my computer crashes. I check inside and only local. And the distance, it'll vary, but let's just set that to 0.1 for now. And we can hold Shift and Control to just view that, and you can see that's basically what we want. But let's add a color ramp. And you can sort of dial that in, make it more obvious. And now if we want that on our texture, we can add a mix color node, connect that here to the diffuse chain or the color chain. And then we connect the color from the color ramp into the B input and change the mix color node to multiply. And we need to connect that again. And now it has like darker edges. And with the factor, you can change how dark that should be. Now it looks it doesn't look natural right now. So what you can do is mix in some noise to this. So let's add a noise texture. I'm gonna add some mapping nodes with Control T, set that to object, and then we need another mix color node, connect that there after the ambient occlusion, connect the noise to the B input, and we actually want a color ramp in between here as well to kind of make this more sharp, and change the mix node here to screen, and there you go. Now you can adjust this however you want, if you want more or less. And you can also go here to the distance on the ambient occlusion node to give it more or less. And it's going to look a bit different in cycles. So if you're going to use cycles, you should probably check, how it looks there first. But for the stuff on top, which, it makes sense to have more dirt on top, I guess, because of gravity. What you can do is, actually, let's put this into a group. Just select all of those and press Control G. And then you can press Tab to get out of that. And now you have this little box where the edge grunge is. But let's bring in a geometry node and a separate XYZ node. Connect the normal to that, and let's bring in a color ramp, connect the Z, and let's mix this in with a mix color node. Actually connect it here first, and then here the color ramp into the B input. And that's basically what we want, but it's white now. So I think you can just flip this with the color ramp and then set this to multiply, I think. And now you have that on top. And you can do the same thing here where you mix in some noise. And you would do that here after the separate XYZ. So we could actually copy that whole thing from the edge grunge. So let's go in here with Tab and copy this, then tab out, and then paste that. We can disconnect that, connect it here, and then reconnect that color ramp. And I think that didn't work. We actually need to connect it after the color ramp. Let's try that. Yeah, that's better. It doesn't look great, but you can like increase the detail here, roughness, and maybe make it slightly less contrasted. But yeah, that's basically the technique I used. And if you have something that's kind of angled, you know, it'll be more or less dark depending on this angle, but you can change that here with this color ramp that comes from the geometry node. So yeah, that's what I did for that. I also want to talk a bit about the lighting, and it's the same setup as I used in my other Gothic castle thing. And yeah, in the world shading settings, there's an HDRI. It's not connected right now, but let's connect that again. This is just like a cloudy HDRI from, I don't know where it is from, but any cloudy thing will do. You can barely see the background or like the HDRI in the final render, but it's just there to give some ambient lighting or whatever. It has this color ramp with like a bluish color to kind of give it a night vibe. And I'm pretty sure this was set to 0.5 in the beginning. And then there's a sunlight, which is, yeah, just coming from the side like this. Let's take a look at that without the volume, because that's gonna just make it run a bit faster. So that's what it looks like without the volume. I guess we can check with the volume as well. That just makes it foggy, you know. And that's a pretty basic setup for the volume. It's just this 0.01 density and 0.9 anisotropy on a volume scatter node into the volume here. And let's see if we can see the actual cube. It's this thing. It covers the church and then these two mountains in the back. It's as high as them pretty much, which you can't really see those either, but they're just there to give some darkness in the background kind of. And then this setup for the fog is like there's some animation going on, which I explain in another video, but that's there. And then yeah, there's a sunlight with I don't know, yeah, these are the settings. It's 25 in strength, 6.4 angle, and then it has this like bluish color to like, yeah, just supposed to look like a night scene. And then these other cubes are there to just cast some shadows. Let's try to see that, like what those do. So that's with those shadow blocks, and here's without them. So yeah, they cast shadow on like the foreground as well. So like here, and then like on the sides of the buildings. So I like having that just kind of spotlight someplace. You could have used like a spotlight, like literally a spotlight. Here I just do it in a more complicated way because I'm stupid, I guess. But yeah, it definitely looks better with those shadows. And then you know there's like a little lamps as well, like inside the building and on the sides, which are just point lights with an orange like tint. They're supposed to look like torches or whatever. Now the render settings I used for this animation was this 4096 samples, and then 0.01 for the noise threshold with the noise on, and I have max bounces set to 32 for everything, and that's pretty much it. I think everything that's important. Yeah, and these things in the foreground are just I think this is from Blender Kit, which is an add-on with a bunch of free assets. And these rocks are from Quixel Megascans, which right now in November of 2024, they're free to download if you just make an account. So I would recommend doing that. They have a lot of like 3D scanned things like rocks and other objects, cliffs. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I also have a course where I go through things a bit more thoroughly and I explain everything, and we make everything from scratch. We make 3 animated scenes, and yeah, check it out if you want. There's a link in the description. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and let me know if there's anything else you want a video on, and I might do that. So yeah, bye.